Hello and welcome to Inside Devils talkSPORT's Man Utd show, bringing you the latest news and reaction coming out of Old Trafford. And after our third defeat to Tottenham this season alone, we have a mountain of topics to discuss. Joining me to try and answer what on earth is going on is the Guardian's Jamie Jackson and talkSPORT's Angelina Kelly. Good to see you guys. I mean, it's a total mess. A James Maddison tap-in was enough to get Spurs their third win over Manchester United this season in all comps. And what's going on? What's going on?
It was bad, wasn't it? It was bad. It was one of those where I feel like a draw would have... I mean, Spurs won it and that's that, but I feel like a draw could have been fair. I feel like we did have some chances, but I think when you're looking at it and Joshua Zirkzee / I think like De Ligt had some good moments, but Joshua Zirkzee's your best player. It wasn't great at all. Very, very sad viewing, very boring game, just waiting for something to happen. And you find, you know, Amrim's using this excuse of, oh no, we were chasing a goal, so that's why I didn't make any subs. It's like, why is he lying to us? Like, he always makes subs, like, normally between either at half-time or by the 60th minute. And I just got a bit frustrated that you bring a player on with 3 minutes of injury time or something, don't even get a touch of the ball. Don't really think that was the best decision from him. But yeah, you're just becoming numb to it. Same old, isn't it?
Yeah, it is the same old. It continues. Jamie, welcome to the show for your debut in here.
Person.
In person, which is great to have you, mate. Amrim said after the game that his job is so hard. How much of the issues of what's going on now are in his court versus the wider context and the mess that is Man United?
Yeah, I mean, this is the question. He's responsible for what goes on in the field. He cannot have taken this job. He didn't think he could do a lot better than this. Listen, you zoom out and then you look at the club and the whole INEOS situation. Actually, mess is the word. I think it's a polite word, really. It's a bit of a crisis, really, if you actually think about all the 100%. Stuff that's going on. I'm a little bit surprised in Ruben Amorim because he comes across, and I think he's a very intelligent, articulate man. And why I mention that is I'm sure that must feed into how he speaks to players, how he looks at football and himself. So what I'm surprised about is this thing about this system. On the one hand, a few clubs play 3-4-3. Crystal Palace came there and did a number on United, playing a very nice 3-4-3. So I'm thinking, I don't care which Joe Bloggs players you've got, they should be able to adapt to it. But something's not working, is it? Whether it's him himself giving off the sort of vibe that I don't think you lot are quite good enough or adapted to this, so this is like getting in their heads. He's got to do better. Not because he's a miracle worker. I'm not asking him to make United like challengers or even top six, you know, however you want to describe that. Just slightly better than what they are, because there's nothing.
There's been no improvement,
There's nothing really. We've gone backwards. I think I've read a stat, I've forgotten this, that United were maybe 3 or 4 points off the top 4 when Ten Hag got offed. I mean, you know, everyone would kill for that associated with the club now. Then if you zoom out, I keep on thinking with Sir Jim Ratcliffe and this INEOS thing that, right, he messed up over Ten Hag, keeping over the summer. The Dan Ashworth thing was a farce, beyond farce. You know, let's wait however many months to get him in the club, pay a few million, and then he goes after 5 months. I mean, it's basically because he wanted Thomas Frank, as I understand it, and there was an agreement of the Ten Hag keeping the job. Ratcliffe couldn't work with him. So I'm looking at that, and then all the redundancies, all the pain, all that horrible for people's, you know, livelihoods, families. And I'm thinking, surely he must be doing this in his head for the right reasons. That in the long term, whatever the long term might be, United will emerge from this. You know, I was told when this latest round of redundancies became a news sort of story that within 2 years they think this is going to then work, right? That seems like a reasonable time frame. But I'll tell you what, and I'm sure you probably discussed this or thought it yourself. Why didn't he just come out, Sir Jim Ratcliffe, and sort of say to people, look, you know
this
what,
is
right?
The plan. This is what we're looking to do.
Yeah, I made some mistakes. Doing X, Y, and Z. This is the plan. It's not great. I understand if you think I'm having a shocker here, but you know, stick with me because I'm trying. You know, just something like that. Yeah,
it's transparency, like isn't it? Because the PR around INEOS couldn't be worse.
Ruben Amorim has also said, Ange, that he doesn't fear for his job. Is that because? Is he getting too much of an easy ride, or is that because of the understanding that, look at this mess, he wanted to come at the end of the season, he was told, come here now. He wasn't exactly supported in the January transfer window, really. We are, like Crookie said many times, and I agree, our squad's actually weaker after the January window has closed. And maybe that's better for the long term because you have to start initiating the exit packages because Man United can't get quick deals done. So Anthony, Marcus Rashford, Terrell Malacia, those players probably aren't going to have a future. So you have to initiate that now. But in the short term, it weakens the squad. And we didn't get any other attackers in. Is he... Do you understand why he's comfortable in his job? Because he's basically saying, listen, I'm not going anywhere now. This is going to be awful. I'm going to be here in the summer, no matter what. Yeah. And we can go from there.
I want him to be comfortable in his job because I feel like, what do you do next? You've paid all this money to get rid of Ten Hag and bring him in. What are you going to do? Keep him for half a season and then get rid because it's still not working? Who else, realistically, would you bring in? I think this is the situation with Man United is Ruben Amorim's not just having to deal with players that aren't good enough, that have got a terrible mentality, with powers that be that are new to the club and old powers that be that we all know are quite difficult, but he's creating a tactical identity, which Manchester United haven't had in a very, very long time. That should be the job of somebody like a Dan Ashworth, who he gave his opinions and they got rid of him. And I don't know, Jamie, if you know more about this, but I think about in Wilcox, what is his role? Because he was supposed to be sort of taking over from stuff like that. But I feel like Amorim is single-handedly trying to push this identity on Man United that they've not had for probably a decade. It's a big job. It's not just getting the players to play right. It's this whole thing.
We kind of nailed something there. I think that's interesting. That Ashworth is supposed to be, or was supposed to be, the executive or the person in that role, sporting director, who kind of oversees, the strategy, how the team plays. With Wilcox, technical, sort of executing that, making sure that actually happens. That's the whole point of having a sporting director because, I shouldn't really have to spell this out to United, basically, to Jim Ratcliffe or whatever, but, so you don't have sort of instability in terms of the manager, and it doesn't really, and so to get rid of that person, then not officially replace him, I think you're right. I think Jason Wilcox has taken over that. But to be honest, if you ask me who the sporting director is, I'd say it's Jim Ratcliffe. If you ask me who the chief executive is, Jim Ratcliffe.
Yeah.
It just is. He's there all the time. He was there, let me get this right, I think he was there last Friday, for example, just at Old Trafford in a box meeting some people. That's up to him. It's his, it's his club and all the rest of it. But what I'm saying is he's there on the ground all the time. And this 3-4-3, is this going to be Manchester United's mode of play for the next 10, 15 years?
Well, Gary Neville said they look like under-9s with this system. And I know that's quite eccentric. Do you think Amorim's causing problems of his own? Are you just I think
it's counterproductive what's going on here. Because the reason why I sort of said that then about is this going to be the way the United play for the next 10, 15 years? If not, why is it going on now? If it is, fair enough. But if so, you've got to have a coach who is able to sort of, Sir Alex Ferguson started off with 4-4-2, then sort of played 4-5. He messed around, he tweaked when he needed to. He
basically,
evolved.
the best managers can adapt.
Well, yeah, for me, that should be your mode of play and adaptability. Yeah, you have a base, right? Yeah. But within that, okay, today we're going to play 4. And it shouldn't be a big deal. It's always become sort of like a massive thing. Oh, this is the system and it has to work, otherwise. It's like, wait a minute, you're a football coach. Football's a relatively simple game. Listen, I've never played at any sort of level or coached, but I observe a lot, as I know we all do. And you don't have to really be a rocket scientist to look at. Guardiola's played 5 at the back, wing back. That's not his system, but he's done it when he had to. I think in his first season, more than any other time, but he did it because he looked at it and thought, I need to do something here. What's wrong with that?
There has been, and this is where, like, as fans, and this is where the conversation really, really widens, because some fans are saying, a lot of fans are saying, well, we asked Eric Ten Hag to come in with a philosophy and a style of play. He ditched those principles after basically getting destroyed against Brentford at 4-0. And we pretty much never saw what he really wanted to do again and never went back to a specific style. And the biggest criticism of Eric Ten Hag is, what are Man United trying to do? They've got no style of play. They've got nothing that's identifiable. They've got nothing that you can predict before the game of this is how they're set up, this is what they're trying to do, and this is what we'll probably see. Then INEOS bring a manager like Ruben Amorim here for that system. He's been employed by INEOS for that. Because I remember when Eric Ten Hag said, when people said, play the Ajax way, we want that, what we saw in that Champions League run. He went, can't do that, I haven't got Ajax players. Then proceeded to buy a whole load of Ajax players. So that's where we're coming from. And all the United fans, and all the scrutiny is, what on earth are you doing? What do you mean you can't play the Ajax? Apparently a lot of fans said, he lost me then. This guy's come in and said, I will give you that sport. That is what I do. And I'm not moving. If I have to weed out the crap, if I have to weed out the players who are not good, I will take the pain now until I get what I want. And then it's almost like, as fans, sometimes we're talking out of both sides of our mouth. Which one do we want? Do we just want someone who keeps changing, depending on the system, but then we go, don't change for these players. These are the same players that in 4-3-3, 4-2-3-1, 4-4-2 under Eric Ten, they were awful. They were getting laughed out of the place. We lost to Bournemouth, we lost to Fulham, I remember a game against Burnley under Vincent Kompany last year. Xander Berg was having the luxury of the whole pitch. And we're going, what is this? So let's not act like, let's revert back to something that was really working. It was the worst, that was also the worst Man United team we've ever seen.
I agree with what you're saying, because I think Ruben Amorim spoke about it, didn't he? And he said, if I go back on my principles, then we're just going to later down the line, we're going to have more problems and history's going to repeat itself. So, and I'm not saying that that's... No, you know what? I am saying that it's right the way that he's doing things, because I've said it a couple of times, the mentality of these players, it makes me think that if he changes anything slightly to kind of soften things for them, they'll be like, yeah, I told you it wasn't going to work.
Well, actually, I'll give you another piece. Your good friend, Chris Wheeler, you know, Chris done a piece saying today that apparently, you know, the United players are becoming a little bit, we don't really like this system.
Yeah, because it's hard.
And that's met with United fans going, we've seen this before. Don't you lot dare. Ruben, stay strong. Do not give in to them.
And it's a weird kind of like power dynamic that he's also battling, and that's what I mean, in that there's so many different layers to what he's dealing with. But for me, it is, what do you want? Do you want him to change? I do think that you have to have some kind of tweaking.
Yeah,
I do think that, and I think we've said that before, of, you know, like maybe does he just, for one game, try a back four, for example, because the formation can be tweaked, but I just think the second he deviates from anything, it's just going to potentially cause more problems. And he's very aware that people have come in with a style of play, they backtrack, it doesn't work, and he's maybe thinking, I need to just keep with this.
I completely agree with you. All I would add to that is if he starts winning games, he can kind of do what he likes, you know. Then he can tweak, can't he? Because then people are like, okay, it doesn't matter.
And maybe
so that's the problem. That's what I'm sort of saying.
Yeah, maybe.
Just find a way.
Yeah.
Don't know, just to give yourself a bit. I really want him to succeed. I always say this about each manager since Ferguson. I really thought this was the right appointment, this guy. But actually, out of all of them, and maybe it is because I'm, you know, sort of new still. He's the latest one through the door. But I do think he's the most exciting you've had since Ferguson because of his profile. You know, he's 39, 40, he's 40 now, but on the rise. Look at that sporting team. Was at that game when they took apart City, you know, earlier in this season, the Champions League, where it's 4 or 5-1.
So we've seen something.
Yes.
There. You've seen what happens if you can allow him to build the system.
Exactly.
I know it's not as transparent.
Exactly.
It's not as transparent as, see, look, you did that in the Portuguese League. But allow the principles to truly be embedded into a squad. Support him, INEOS, in bringing in players. You know, like, I'm not saying Patrick Dorgu is the answer to everything, of course not, but I'm saying players of that up and coming, there's reports about Giovanni Chienda, these types of players who really fit what he wants.
Yes.
Allow that and then judge him. What I have seen, which does happen in the United fan base, as we know, online and the hysteria, we're emotional. We say, right, get Eric Ten Hag out, and the next guy, we've got to stand by him, like, just eat, no matter how bad it gets. Weed out the players. Doesn't matter if we finish 10th, 12th, you know, just get rid of them. We've seen the Leopards, as Roy Keane says, Leopards don't change their spots. But then what happens when the results comes? We don't really have the stomach for it. We're like,
it's understandable, human beings.
Exactly, because then we change, and then we're like, and then we lose sight. So really what's happening is there's this up and down emotion, and which is taken away from the wider project of we have to stick with this.
And I think when you pull into that, the Sancho situation, the Rashford situation, the INEOS situation, the season ticket prices, the redundancies, when you rope all of this in together, you can understand. Yeah, it is. It's absolute chaos. You're right.
On the Spurs game, though, I actually thought, if I'm honest, you could see why it was. I think by the time we kicked off, it was 14th against 15th, wasn't it? By the time I think it was.
Yeah, it was. Yeah.
Wasn't a lot in it really. It was two poor
Garnacho
teams.
Could finish.
Garnacho should have scored. We had enough chances to score at least a couple, at least get a draw out of that game.
Yeah, and this is where I do have some sort of...
It's fine margins when we do lose.
Exactly, and I have a lot of empathy for Amrin or any coach, because he can't go into the press conference afterwards and say, well, if Garnacho could actually finish today...
No,
I mean, he can't
not going to throw him under the bus.
So he's got to take all this on, and it goes... You know, I mean, it's just... Looking at that performance, it could have gone the other way. And, you know, because Postecoglou afterwards, I wouldn't say he was crowing, but it was almost like he'd won, you know, the league, the way he was talking about it.
And so annoying,
I mean, you know, again, he's doing it maybe just for the public.
But it's just a big sigh of relief for them because he's
100%.
under.
Yeah.
100%. I mean, you know, you sort of said it then about which side of the mouth do fans speak out, and it's the same to do with patience and time. Everyone thinks in football, yeah, this person needs time, Ruben Amorim in this case, but when it actually comes to it, the time is very, very short, and that's why you hear people like him, other coaches, sort of saying, I need to win, because he buys time, obviously.
100%. He said that from the first day, didn't he?
What my stance is, I think he should have come into, I've got these principles, but my principles actually are 3-4-3, 100%, but within that, expect the odd bit of T-word.
That little bit of flexibility would have been nice
now
to
it
see,
almost feels like, as you're saying, Angelina, he's not going to be a man of principle if he does change it, which is obviously not true, but it's just...
Can I ask you this, Jay, actually? We spoke about this on, I think it was last week's show, when Ryan brought it up on a show with Ali McCoist about basically the United legends not really helping. And it's actually ironic that we thrashed this out, didn't we, Ange?
Yeah.
And Gary Neville's proceeded to go on and really be really critical of Amorim, on a personal, as a manager, rather than the whole institution, rather than INEOS, this, that and the other. Yeah. And it wound a lot of Man United fans up. I saw online saying, what good does he think that does? You know, he didn't have the same energy when Ollie was under the bus. Like, how do you see it in terms of legends coming out and being really scathing and saying what they see?
Listen, you've got to remember, I'm not a fan of Manchester United.
Yeah, so that's why you're a good person to ask.
Yeah, I've not got that investment. I didn't think he was overly harsh, Gary Neville. I thought what he was saying when he was identifying the midfield, the gap between Casemiro and...
Bruno.
Yeah, Bruno. And I was looking at it thinking, crumbs, yeah, he's right. I mean, there's acres there, relatively speaking, for a top-level football game. You know, I've heard him be critical. I do think he does seem to leave... I mean, maybe he's done it on other occasions, but I was a bit surprised he wasn't then sort of saying, yeah, that's going on, but wait a minute, look at the absolute what's it hand he's been dealt by INEOS, the club.
Interesting,
you know what I mean? Everything going on behind the scenes, with all the redundancies. I mean, there's, people feel a lot of pain there. You know, it's like when anyone loses their job, it's horrible. So all that's going on, I don't care who you are, what club you are. You can't win anything if it's like that. You just can't. It just can't, because
the whole culture of the environment.
It's called a club because everyone's connected. It's like a family. It sounds a bit cheesy, but it's true.
It is. Yeah. Especially United.
Well, no, we go in there. We see these same people. They're nice people, like your friends, right?
Yeah.
We don't work with them, so it's going to have an effect if any sort of proper person. So it's very difficult. It's dysfunctional. Yeah. So, and when he said it's our responsibility, I thought, crumbs, that's really good of you to say that. Brave, but you don't have to say that. It's not your, it's not your fault people are getting sacked.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? I know what he's getting at, but he's only just walked through the door in terms of like the result.
Yeah, he's literally walked into this mess. He hasn't been complicit.
So, I mean, it's an absolute what's it of a situation for everyone.
How do you feel about it, Andrew? Gary Neville was saying, Ruben's angry. I'm not really sure who he's shouting at. He was really going in on him. Do you agree with that? Was that a fair assessment, or do you think, like what Ryan is saying, he actually has more of a point than maybe what we were discussing last week?
I think it's a fair assessment to an extent, because it wasn't a good game of football, and I was frustrated that I get that your bench is mainly small children, but
small children.
Try something.
Massive.
I know, yeah, true. I say that of like barely 5'5".
Second Code's massive as well, but I know you mean.
But it's like, do something, because as much as people are saying, you shouldn't put these kids into such a toxic environment. You've got professional footballers with loads of experience. They've got international experience, and even they're struggling in this situation. But a lot of these kids that are now with under-21s, they won, I think, about 3 trophies with the under-18s. They've had, I think, their last 8 domestic games they've won. So these kids have got a bit more about them when it comes to, just trying to make something happen, trying to get a win, trying to create something. So I think I'm more on the side of the argument of I would feature them, and I know that Amorim said that he would like to. So I was frustrated with the game, so I kind of got where Gary Neville was coming from. I mean, there's a lot of maybe conspiracy theories or discussions as to why Gary Neville has been so kind to Sir Jim and co. Which I have no idea, so I wouldn't comment. But I do think that if you're going to go in on the manager. I think you've got to be fair across the board because it isn't just this man's problem. He was told you come now or you don't go to the club. He's been put in an impossible
with
situation.
Not much support in the January transfer window. Probably might have known that as well, but also that has to be taken into account, whether he knew or he didn't. It's like, you're not going to get money in January as well. We'll add that in as well. Oh, okay, so I'll just keep working with
Merry
this
Christmas.
worse. Yeah, exactly. I mean, before we move on, just on INEOS then, Jamie, I mean, they're coming up, approaching a year in situ.
Feels like longer.
It does. It feels like it does. It does feel like a decade.
Yeah.
How have they done for you? Is it? Do you think it's can work well in the future? Is it just a case of they're allowed to make mistakes in the first year, they'll learn from it, or do you see this as this isn't going to work?
Listen, I think you phrased the question very fairly because you put in a few things there which about they're allowed to make mistakes. I think everyone is. I'm just a little bit surprised given Ratcliffe's experience in other sports, or maybe I shouldn't be because it's not been going that great.
Great, exactly.
But I go back to the Ten Hag / Ashworth thing, and what is going on there? How can you employ a guy in Ashworth, let's say, who you haven't done your due diligence on, or if you have, it hasn't shown up that he might have strong ideas about who the manager should be, because by the way, that's his job, sporting director. Keeping Ten Hag and then letting him go. I mean, that costs a lot of money. That would have paid for maybe another Patrick Dorgu or a striker or a forward or whatever it might. You know what I mean? So if I was going to mark them out of 10, and I'm being kind here, I'd give them 4. Yeah. The reason it's not a lot lower is because they've employed Amarin, and I think they've got that one right. Yeah. But they've got to they've got to back him. And when I say that, it's about time, even if it's not money. But I don't think they've had a great first year, and it really is not last chance saloon, but these redundancies are going through. I'm being told 2 years' time. It's the phrase to me was something like, through doing this, we will have a competitive edge over elite rivals. Doing this now, this pain basically, it has to be done sort of thing. So let's wait and see. That's their own time frame, which I don't think is an unreasonable time frame considering the mess. But this summer, I don't know. Yeah, there'll be a bit of money, but at the moment, the cupboard is bare.
100%. That's the scary thing. Is where is this money going to come from? That's why these players aren't all going to leave in the summer. We're not going to get a whole squad overhaul. It's not going to happen. I'll take your point there, Jamie. I mean, for you, and as a United fan, fair to say we expected an awful lot more from INEOS in the first year, didn't we?
Yeah, I'd probably say similar of 4 out of 10, because as much as, like you said, Jamie, it's not great in other sports, but this whole ruthless Sir Jim Ratcliffe, I think that he's just been ruthless in the wrong areas. And I don't understand, and I'm not a financial expert, but I don't understand how these little bits and bobs of penny pinching that he's doing, how it's actually going to add up. I remember reading something about, stopping stewards getting a £50 bonus or something like that. The amount of the years, the decades it would take for that money to even have a dent in Manchester United, it's insignificant.
Versus the effect it has on the morale of the workforce.
And that's the thing that really kind of scares me about this situation, is to you're not getting anything from something like that. I think also for me, I watch a lot of women's football. They're second in the WSL. If that continues, they're going to be looking at hopefully playing Champions League football. They're still in a cup competition.
And that's not with the greatest of support from INEOS as well.
Exactly. Yeah. And, fans are talking about it. And Sir Jim Ratcliffe has not been to a game at Leigh Sports Village where they play. I think some people, I think Omar Brada might have been there or something like that. For them to be playing at a cup final at Wembley and he can't be bothered to show up, things like that for me personally sting.